guys, welcome back to Destin Reads Romance. I'm Destin and I'm here with another kind of weekly wrap up. It's pretty much going to be the second half of August since I wasn't quite caught up doing the mid-month August wrap up. So it's going to be more than a week's worth of books. I might not spend a lot of time on certain books and I might spend more time on the books that I really would like to talk about. Because also, in case you didn't know, today is the 28th, I believe. Yes. So Saturday the 28th, and we have a hurricane coming towards us in Louisiana, Hurricane Ida. I don't know if I'm going to have power. It just depends. I don't know if she's going to make landfall Sunday afternoon or Sunday night, early morning, Monday. It's a fast moving hurricane, so it's a guessing game at this point, but I wanted to make sure that I was getting some videos filmed and edited and uploaded to YouTube before all that happens, because if we have a power outage, then it might be a couple days until we get that back. There's lots I want to do today, so I might be a little bit limited on time while talking about books. So let's get started because we're wasting time. The first book I want to talk about is Moon Awakening by Lucy Monroe. And this book I actually forgot to talk about for my mid-month August wrap-up. I actually read it in the beginning of August, but that was whenever I was sick with the virus, so it was like brain fog central, and I completely forgot to record that in my Airtable, so I forgot all about it until Crystal had mentioned it in one of her video clips, and I was like, oh yeah, I read that. This is the first book in the Children of the Moon series, and this is historical Scottish romance, but it also has paranormal elements because the hero is a werewolf or a wolf shifter. The heroine, Emily, is very protective of her younger sister, her younger sister aspires to be like a cloistered nun. She doesn't want to get married at all, and her father is trying to marry her off, so Emily kind of offers herself up to make an alliance with this clan instead, and so she's sent to marry this laird, and he really doesn't want to marry her, but they're kind of being forced into it because like it's mandated by the king. When she gets there, she's really not very welcome, and she is completely unaware that this Scottish laird is a wolf shifter, and his whole community knows about it. Like there's other wolf shifters in the community, and she's completely unaware of like tensions between clans in Scotland because she is English. Not only is it just warring clans, it's warring wolf shifters, so she's going in completely blind to this situation. She does bond with this laird's sister, and she's actually a widow, and she's currently pregnant, so her husband had recently died. She's hearing about this dispute with another clan, and that laird is called Lachlan. So one day when she and her future sister-in-law, because she's not married yet because the laird is being very difficult, he doesn't want to marry her, they're just like walking about and they get captured by the rival clan, Lachlan. So Lachlan is actually the love interest, not the person who she was originally supposed to marry. He's also a wolf shifter. And the sister-in-law is completely aware because she's a wolf shifter, so she knows a lot more going into this situation, that it's more than meets the eye, it's more than just a rival Scottish clan, there's other things brewing. And when Lachlan meets Emily, he realizes that this human woman is his mate, so there is kind of like a mate soulmate element to this story, and he doesn't want to be mated to a human woman because he always imagined himself with another wolf shifter and someone from his clan. He's like, she can't be my mate, like I need somebody strong, I'm the leader, they might not accept her. She obviously is completely unaware that there's paranormal things going on, so how can this be my mate? So he is the one who's really fighting against their bond. I found it kind of difficult to connect with the characters. I didn't find that the banter was very great in this book. I felt like the dialogue was incredibly repetitive. They had the same conversation over and over and over again, and it was just not great. There was so much miscommunication. So I thought that I was going to be extremely invested because there's been a few historical paranormal romances in the past that I've really loved, and it's been a while since I've read something like that, so I was really excited when I found out that this was going to be a historical romance with wolf shifters in it, and I was expecting great things, and it just really fell flat. Like the story was there, I really liked the story, the execution just didn't really hit it for me, so I gave this book 3 stars. Then I did a reread because this was at the point where I was reading a lot of 3-star books and I just really wasn't enjoying it. I was trying to get out the book slump. I was starting to feel better, and I decided to pick up Burn For Me by Ilona Andrews because it is one of my favorite books, and I was just looking for something that was really good and had those fantasy elements that I was looking for. Mad Rogan is always great, and it really did help me. So, of course, this book is 5 stars. I've talked about this book so many times. We have a podcast episode on it, so I'm not going to rehash the plot of it again, but just letting you know, Mad Rogan is on my book boyfriends list, like my top book boyfriends list. He's He's amazing. This trilogy with this couple is amazing, and yeah, that's all I have to say. Next is a new to me author, My Mostly Secret Baby by Penelope Bloom. I've never read anything by Penelope Bloom before, and I knew this was going to have more of like a rom-com-y element, and so I was like, maybe I should try this because I haven't really been picking up any rom-coms. The hero Damon is like a CEO, he's like a billionaire and stuff, and the heroine Chelsea, they always clash. They're very antagonistic toward each other. And the way that they sleep together for the first time, because this is a secret baby romance, was very weird. I don't know. I don't know if it was still because I was in a weird mood because of like my brain fog and this just wasn't hitting the spot. And so I felt very weird about this book. I just didn't love how like they first slept together and then they never saw each other again. Well, backtrack, that's not true. Chelsea finds out she's pregnant and she sees him again, but he is extremely mean to her. And so she decides, well, I tried to contact you. I'm not going to try anymore to tell you that I'm pregnant. I'm just going to go at it alone. And so she does. I think it's about 4 years later. I can't remember exactly, but some years pass and now she has, you know, a 4, 5, 6, somewhere in that range, little girl named Luna. She's trying to get a better job. She's been searching everywhere, and her last resort is actually Damon's company. She really doesn't want to do it, but she has to try. And when she gets an interview, she actually like goes up to the receptionist desk and he recognizes her name. He goes there and he immediately like gives her a job with like an insane salary, okay? Insane salary. And she's like, of course, I accept. And he's like meeting his daughter, not knowing that this is his daughter. She does not tell him right away. And I just felt very kind of weird about this book. I don't know if it's because Penelope Bloom doesn't have my brand of humor or if it was the mood that I was in. But I did not enjoy this reading experience, so I gave this book a 3-star. I will try to read another Penelope Bloom. Malia, actually, when she saw that I read one, recommended another book to me. So I might, down the line, when I feel up to it, try another Penelope Bloom, the one that she recommended to me. Then I listened to The Husband Trap by Tracy Ann Warren. This was one of the recommendations for our August poll on Patreon. Everyone recommends a book and we vote on it and see which book we're going to review together, and we have a live show. And it did not win. The Wallflower Wager actually won, but I was very interested in this plot, The Husband Trap, because there are 2 twin sisters, Jeanette and Violet, and Jeanette is supposed to be marrying this Duke, Adrian. And last minute, like the night before the wedding, Jeanette decides, I don't want to marry him. And Jeanette's the twin sister that gets a lot of attention from the parents, and she's the more social one. And Violet's like the quieter one. She wears spectacles, and she's just kind of like, I can't do it. And Violet suspects that it's because her sister has a lover, and she doesn't want to marry the Duke because she's in love with somebody else. Violet has been secretly in love with the Duke, with Adrian. So she really doesn't hesitate when her sister makes a crazy suggestion that Violet should stand in Jeanette's place. They should trick their parents, they should trick Adrian, put Violet in Jeanette's place, and have Violet marry the Duke without ever telling him that he's marrying the other twin sister. So much potential angst for this situation, and so of course I really wanted to pick up this book. It had a bit of a slow start because Violet is so much in her head while she's actually in the process of marrying Adrian. She's like, someone's gonna catch me, oh my god, should I sign my name on the marriage certificate or Jeanette's name? And she actually does end up by signing her name on the marriage certificate, because I do believe that Violet's middle name is Violet and her first name maybe Jean or something like that. I don't know. So she does sign her actual name on the marriage certificate. And this whole time while they're married, she's trying to channel her sister because her sister is a socialite. Her sister likes pretty things. She's a little bit flighty. She's a little bit vain. And Violet is completely not like that. She's very bookish. She likes to have conversations about geography, about architecture, all kinds of stuff like that, history. And that's actually more Adrian's speed, but he feels like Jeanette was like Duchess material. Because when you think about the hierarchy in the British aristocracy, dukes and duchesses, they kind of are the trendsetters. They're expected to host the most extravagant balls. You have to socialize a lot. So the Wallflower sister wasn't really an option for Adrian, and he wanted the more outgoing one. But interestingly enough, he has more in common with Violet. And so they actually do start falling in love. And the main conflict is that Adrian is completely unaware that this is Violet. And I do find that that situation went on too long. I wasn't really loving the third act conflict. The way it was handled, the way it played out, that didn't really work for me. But I enjoyed a lot of aspects. I enjoyed Adrian and Violet getting to know each other, finding common ground. Adrian realizing that he's in love with Violet, and Violet discovering a lot of things about Adrian that she didn't know before, and she's falling even more in love with him, and she's struggling internally because she's like, I want him to know, I want him to call my name with love and affection, but he's calling my sister's name. And Jeanette does come back into play in the situation, create some chaos. So it's definitely like an angsty book, but I did enjoy it. I just wish it wrapped up a little bit better because that would have been a 5-star book for me. I ended up by giving it 4 stars. Then I read Dark Notes by Pam Godwin because I was preparing for our Pam Godwin live show that Jen hosted. It was so much fun. She's such a cool author to talk to. Her process is very interesting. If you haven't watched that live show, you go to Jen's channel and go watch that. I'll actually link it down below. I'll link it down below. Go watch it. Pam Godwin's amazing. So Dark Notes is a dark romance. There's some traumatic things that the heroine goes through, and it's also an age gap romance and a student-teacher romance, so taboo. I think that Pam Godwin is another author besides Sierra Simone that really handles like taboo elements very, very well. Pam Godwin is one of my go-to like dark romance authors. I think she just hits those notes, knows when to pull back, and that's something that she talks about in the live show. And she just does it so well. Dark Notes is set in New Orleans, and the heroine, Ivory, she is 17 years old. Her mom is not that great, and she's between jobs, and Ivory is actually the person who's expected to kind of keep the family afloat, and she is in school. She has a scholarship to go to this affluent high school. Her brother is a veteran, but he spiraled. He got involved with drugs and with crime, and his friends are just not that great. There's lots of trauma that happens in Ivory's past, so I'm going to give some trigger warnings. If you don't want to know any trigger warnings for this, then just skip this part. But Ivory was raped when she was 13 years old by her brother's friend, just one. I believe her brother is about 7 years older than her, and she was 13. So that's terrible. And she has a bad relationship with her body and like sex, because one of the ways that she is able to have money to pay the bills, to pay the rent, is she hooks up with people in high school, and she's going to this very affluent high school, so there's a lot of rich kids that have like astronomical allowances, and she is actually prostituting herself to keep her family afloat because she wants to get through the school, hopefully get the scholarship to a good college and get out of here. So she's trying to get out of here, and she's doing exactly what she needs to do. She hates sex. She finds it completely awful. She is just so lost, but she's struggling and she's trying to survive. Enter the new teacher, Emmerich, who his family is very involved in music and stuff. And he was a principal, I believe, in another school, and there was some drama that happened. And so he moved to New Orleans. He's a little bit surly because of all that, and he clashes with Ivory. He knows that Ivory's really talented, but he really kind of clashes with her personality at first. But the great thing about this book is the way that Emmerich and Ivory bond. Of course, they're bonding over music, but he also sees something in Ivory, and he wants to help her. He knows she's struggling. He starts getting kind of invested in her home life, and he doesn't want her to be in this situation. He's slowly discovering the way that guys in the school treat her, and he's trying to be like that buffer in these situations. But the highlights of the story are the conversations that Emmerich has with Ivory as he's trying to build up her self-esteem, trying to show her, because she's like, I don't know how I feel about this. While she's starting to become attracted to Emmerich, she's doesn't really trust it because she doesn't have that healthy relationship with sex and attraction, and he's explaining it to her. He's trying to explain, what's the feeling that you feel when you're hungry? Think about how you feel about that. What's the feeling that you feel whenever you listen to music? Think about that. Combine those two emotions, and that's like attraction, this need and this hunger for somebody else. And he's like explaining it to her, showing her this is the difference, and you should feel this way about somebody. You shouldn't have sex with somebody if you don't feel this way about somebody. So anyway, it's just amazing. I thought that it was phenomenal. I gave this book 4.5 stars. There was lots of drama and some high anxiety moments toward the end, a conflict toward the end that I was just like dying about it. Pam Godwin will do that to you, but yeah, I really do love this book. Next, I read Wild Game by Alyssa Wood. This is a new to me author. And like I'm still searching for like the paranormal romances. I was looking for wolf shifter romances still, and this one did not hit the spot. This is the first book in the Wilding Pack series, and this is a bodyguard romance. So Nova is the daughter of a recently passed alpha, and there's different packs. Her pack is very techie. They're like into game development, and she's pretty popular. She's a pretty popular gamer. But apparently Nova has to marry another wolf shifter. They really want her to marry somebody in the pack. Once she does select a mate, all the power transfers to that person. So she really is giving up like her alpha status once she does find a mate. She's not ready. She pretty much blames it on the fact that her father has recently passed, and she's just like not ready to take that next step. She has a friend, Brad, who I believe it's Brad, who keeps kind of pressuring her, being like, we're meant to be together. But since there's shenanigans going on, and I feel like this must be a spinoff from something else, because I felt like the establishment of what was going on with these packs with these wolf shifters wasn't very clear. When we get in the point of view of Owen, who is her bodyguard, his pack is insecurity and stuff like that. He was talking about how he was experimented on in the military, and at first I thought the experiments were actually changing humans into wolf shifters, but he was a wolf shifter before. So that wasn't very clear to me. I just feel like this book felt very messy. I didn't love the way that the conflicts played out. I didn't really feel the romantic tension between Owen and Nova. It was just kind of like, oh, we're in the same room together. I guess we're attracted to each other. And that's how I felt while reading it. So it was kind of a big downer. I only gave this book 3 stars, and I was kind of being generous with that. Next, I read The Devil is a Marquee by Elisa Braden. And this is the 4th book in her Rescued from Ruin series. I've really been enjoying Elisa Braden so much. She's my favorite new historical romance author discovery, and she's indie published. First, I read her, I can never remember the series title, but The Making of the Highlander and The Taming of the Highlander, which we're doing a podcast episode on The Taming of the Highlander very, very, very soon. I read those books first, and those are her most recently published, and she's gotten a lot stronger as a writer, and you can really tell when you're going from her most recent books into the beginning of the Rescued from Ruin series. But these books that I'm currently in, books 4, 5, I've read books 4 and 5. The next one I'm going to pick up is 6. You can see that she has found her stride, because I love the setup for this book so much, and I really love the characters. The heroine, Charlotte, her father is American, and they moved to England because he married her mother, who is English, and her father really wants his daughter to marry into the English aristocracy. He really wants that, blue blood, noble bloodline in his family. That's his goal and dream. Charlotte wants to be a spinster, and she is very good at business. She has learned at her father's knee, and she has been saving her money, her allowance, wants to go back to America and open up her own business. So she hasn't really been trying for all of her seasons to find a husband, and her father knows it. So he decides to make a marriage contract with this rake, this scoundrel named Benedict Chatham, and he recently inherited the Marquess title from his father. He's a drunkard. He likes to gamble. He likes to be with women, and Charlotte's very aware of this reputation. So when she goes to meet her father, thinking that her father is going to be like, oh, well, you're a spinster now, and you can just kind of do whatever you want, she thinks she's finally going to have her dream. She's telling her friend Viola, she's like, yay, I'm finally going to be able to do whatever I want. Her father tells her that he has made an arrangement, and she's definitely getting married. She misinterprets and thinks that he's talking about somebody else who was kind of in the running that her father had approached, and he had originally turned him down, named the Earl of Tannenbrook. So she's like, well, I like him. He's my friend. It's not the worst case scenario, and I think that he'll still let me do whatever I want, but nope. It's Benedict. She is so offended, she actually negotiates with her father that after a year of marriage, she would receive double her yearly allowance, because she still wants to have the freedom to do what she wants. Her father made a similar deal with Benedict, that they have to be married for a year. They have to live at his crumbling country estate. They have to go and live with each other. Like, they can't live apart at all. And they have to try for a baby. And if she gives birth to a child, he gets a bonus, and if it's a boy child, he gets an even bigger bonus. In this contract, Charlotte's dad stipulates that he has to be faithful and he can't drink. So I'm like, this is great, because it's setting them up for success. Like, he is a scoundrel, he is a wastrel, but if he wants to replenish his coffers because his father like bankrupted them, he has a mother who likes to spend money willy-nilly, and she's just like so dramatic, and he just did not grow up in a loving household at all. It was very like unstable, and that's why he is the way he is. And he sees this as an opportunity that he really can't pass up, and so he decides to marry her. And also of note, Charlotte's kind of described as an Amazon. She's incredibly tall, and she's redheaded, and she's freckled and stuff, and so she knows that she is not what the ton considers like a diamond of the first water. So her self-esteem is a little bit low. And I really love the situations that Elisa Braden puts her characters in, because almost always there's a situation of forced proximity. Like I said, they must go to his crumbling estate. They must spend the entire year together, not apart. He has to not drink. And she ends up by helping him through his detox when he's getting off of alcohol and he's shaking and stuff, and so she's helping him. She's seeing him vulnerable, and I just love the situations that Elisa Braden puts her characters in. When they get to his estate, she sees it as a project. She's like, if we're gonna be living here, like, we're going to repair this. We're going to get the tenants' houses in shape. We're gonna make sure that the farmland is good. He actually has a purpose now because he sees this as his. He sees the change in the house, and this kind of inspires him. And then he starts becoming attracted to Charlotte, and Charlotte starts becoming attracted to him, and they're both not saying their feelings for each other, so it creates a wonderful tension. And I just love the way that Elisa Braden writes. So this book was phenomenal. I gave it 4.5 stars, and I immediately wanted to read the next book because I knew that there was a situation brewing in the background with Charlotte's best friend Viola and the Earl of Tannenbrook, and I was like, ooh, that's gonna be a good book. There was a scene in The Devil is Marquee where the Earl of Tannenbrook approaches Viola and basically tells her, like, stop pursuing me, and like throws this like handkerchief at her. And so it was like, oh my God, what's happening in this situation? And Viola looks so upset, and Charlotte's trying to comfort her. So I was like, oh my God, I have to read the next one. So that's exactly what I did. The next book is When a Girl Loves an Earl, Viola and the Earl of Tannenbrook, and I love it. So Viola actually is a diamond of the first water. She is the person that everyone wants to be with. She's turned down multiple marriage proposals, and she also has this feeling. She has this like inkling, and every time she has this inkling, she knows that whatever she's feeling, that's going to come true. That's the direction that she needs to go in. And the first time that Charlotte actually mentions the Earl of Tannenbrook, and the reason why they became friendly was because there was this asshole noble that publicly embarrassed Charlotte in the middle of like a ballroom. And the Earl of Tannenbrook is Scottish, and he inherited the earldom, and I'll talk about his background just in a minute. But anyway, he defended Charlotte's honor, and like in such like a powerful way. Like, he picked up the other man by his like cravat. When Charlotte was telling Viola about this, Viola was like, I have a gut feeling that the Earl of Tannenbrook is basically my soulmate, and I need to meet him. And she's like forcing Charlotte to make an introduction between the Earl of Tannenbrook. Whenever they first meet, the Earl of Tannenbrook is not reacting like other men do to Viola. She's not getting the reaction, and she heavily pursues him, and he just like, no, no, no. And the reason why he's rejecting Viola, it's not because he's not attracted to her. She's gorgeous, and she's very sociable. It's hard not to like Viola, and I really love when he gets really exasperated with her, but it's in an endearing way. He's starting to really kind of fall for her. The Earl of Tannenbrook situation is a little bit complicated, and there's a reason why he doesn't really accept Viola's pursuit of him. He actually grew up in Scotland, and he wanted to become a stonemason. He was poor, he was living in this little village, and he had a little sweetheart. They were actually sleeping together, and he had their whole life planned. And suddenly this Englishman, this solicitor, comes around and tells him that he is next in line to the earldom, and he has to accept it. Like, he does not want it at all. He's like, this is completely messing up my life. I'm gonna have to leave home. I'm gonna have to leave my mom and my sister and my sweetheart, and I'm supposed to be a stonemason. I can't be an earl. I don't know how to be an earl. And he's like, I'll help you. Like, you have to do this. There's people counting on you. His mother is actually the one that convinces him, you should do this. You can't not accept. There's no legal way for you to not accept the earldom anyway, and you'd be letting these people down. So he goes to England. He meets his friends, which are some of the previous heroes, and they kind of help him acclimate to the English way of life. They even help him get rid of a bit of his Scottish brogue, which I listen to the audio on Anyplay because all of Elisa Braden's books are on Anyplay, and I love when a Scottish brogue starts to get really heavy when he gets like annoyed with Viola. It's just amazing. He goes back about a year later and he sees that his sweetheart has married somebody else. And there's a bunch of other drama that he's struggling with, and I don't want to spoil that for anybody. It's just great. It's just really great. But he's keeping all of these secrets, all of these feelings, all of his past bottled up, and Viola is trying to worm her way in. And I think that Viola is such an endearing character, and I really kind of love how she just had this inkling that he was her soulmate, and she meets him, knows that he's like the most honorable gentleman that she's ever met before, and wants to be with him. It's amazing. It's just amazing. I gave this book 5 stars. Woof! I've been talking for a long time and I still have a lot of books to go. I said I was going to try to be brief, but I get so excited about these books. It's really hard to kind of limit my review in any type of way. Devastate is the next book that I read by Pam Godwin. This series is very dark. It has a lot to do with sex trafficking, and at this point in the series, as a whole, like the overarching plot of these later books, besides the first 2, involve the freedom fighters. And so they were former sex slaves. They were kidnapped and sexually trained and assaulted, and they escaped some sort of way. And now they're trying to bring down these huge sex trafficking rings. And so they're going like undercover, there's situations and there's connections and stuff like that. Well, this romance is between Tate and Lucia. And Lucia is the younger sister of the heroine from the previous book, who everyone thought was dead. Tate thought that he was in love with Camilla, and so he wants to find her sister to make her happy. And Camilla is like happily in a relationship right now, so he's just like, the least I can do, she's still my friend, is go find her sister, and I'm not gonna let her know that I'm looking for her sister. He does find out that Lucia is alive and well, and she's working for the worst of the worst, a guy who is involved in human trafficking. Lucia was in an accident, and that's why they thought that she was dead, that she had died in this accident. There's a lot going on. You have to read these books in order. And when Tate meets her, he's immediately attracted to her. They do have this connection. You find out that Lucia is very ill, and apparently Tiago, who has kept her on this leash, actually has this medicine that she has to take once every single day in order to not like rapidly deteriorate. And so she is completely stuck in this situation. I think that Pam Godwin creates these situations where maybe our hero or our heroine is doing something completely awful, but it's not their choice really. They're being forced into a situation where they have to do bad things in order to survive. She also is assaulted by Tiago. Like, there's so much going on. And I also really like this book because of the role that Van plays. Van is a complicated situation that I'm not going to go into details if you haven't read this series before, but Van actually has a role to play in this situation. It's kind of like an ongoing redemption arc for Van, who is a side character in this book. And I like the relationship that kind of develops between Tate and Van as they're both monitoring Lucia, trying to figure out how can we get her out of this situation? How can we take down Tiago in a sex trafficking ring? What are we going to do about this situation? Lots of very tense moments, and Pam does talk about how she really loves to read thrillers and horrors. That translates very well to this series. There's multiple scenes where my heart was like in my throat, and I was just like, I don't know how they're going to get out of this situation. But it always pulls through. There's always an HEA for these books, and I did enjoy this story. It wasn't my favorite out of the series, but it was a good book. I gave it 4.5 stars. Now the audio, I did not like the female narrator for this one, and I discovered when I was recently listening to a completely different book, and I was like, I don't like this narrator. She kind of sounds like the one from Devastate, and I look and it's the same person. So I don't like the female narrator for this one. Her name's Tracy Marks, and it did not make it an enjoyable experience, but the plot was so interesting that I was able to push through. Like, I didn't want to DNF because of the narration, but I will definitely be avoiding this narrator because she just doesn't work for me. I immediately jumped into the next book, Take. Slight spoilers, again, if you have not read the books in the series, Pam Godwin likes to redeem her villains. So kind of a spoiler when I'm going to name the hero and the heroine of this book. So you've been warned. The hero is Tiago, the one who had trapped Lucia in that life. He does some heinous things in Devastate to our characters. Heinous things. And when Jen told me, because I was very unaware, I was just gonna go into the next book because I have the pack of 3 audio that Pam bundled. And I was just gonna immediately jump into the next one, not looking at who was the next characters. And Jen was like, oh my God, and I can't wait to see what you think of Tiago and Kate. And I was like, what? Tiago? What? No. And it took me like a couple days to have the courage to start this audio because I hated him. Hated him. Guess what, guys? I ended up by really loving this book because Pam Godwin pushes the limits and she really challenges what we know about these characters. And the way that she's able to peel back the layers, the discoveries that we make as readers for the characters' motivations, and maybe there are certain changes that start happening. It's crazy. This is a dark book. Very much dark book. There's lots of trigger warnings. I'm sure you can read about them. It's a captor-captive situation, questionable consent scenes, non-consent scenes, but the way that Pam Godwin handles it, because whenever it's a really difficult scene, like the non-consensual scene, she is a captor. She doesn't want to be here. And this scene was not glossed over. It was not rushed. It was very fleshed out. And that's the only way that this could have worked. It's crazy. Pam Godwin, I can't describe her writing style. You really have to experience it. But only if you like dark romance. Obviously, don't read it if you don't like dark romance, guys. I gave this book 5 stars. Did I say that already? It was great. It was one of my favorites of the series, which is mind-blowing because I was so hesitant going into this book. Then I went on to Manipulate, which is the final book of the From Evil audio pack. And this is actually an MMF romance. Ricardo and Martin are best friends. They're part of the Freedom Fighters. Ricardo is openly gay, and Martin is his best friend, but Ricardo's like, Martin's a little bit of a homophobe. We're a lot more aware of Ricardo's backstory and what he has gone through. Martin has a bit of a mystery as far as his backstory goes, and that eventually gets revealed more towards the end of the book, but you can kind of suspect. There's a little bit of hints sprinkled throughout the book. But the most interesting character and the point of view that we get first, and let me tell you, I think that this opening is one of the most intense openings of the series. It's crazy. I was struggling with it. I was like, a lot of stuff is happening. This is a lot. This is hard to listen to, but also it's interesting because you know that Pam Godwin is going to do something interesting with it. The heroine's name's Tula. Her full name is Petula, and she is from Mexico, and she has immigrated to the US, and she is a teacher, and she actually teaches Spanish. So she has crossed the border and gone back to Mexico because she got a text from her sister saying to come help, and she gets to her sister's apartment. Her sister's not there. She's kind of waiting around, and she's like, I don't want to leave money here. And so she leaves her a bit of money, but she knows she needs to take some with her. As she's on her way back to cross over the border, go back to the US, she's pulled over by the Mexican police. They claim that she's involved in like drug trafficking, and they start like beating her. Like, it is traumatic. Could you imagine? You're just a regular Joe. You're just a regular teacher. And police arrest you and start beating you, kicking her, slapping her, punching her. It is intense. It is crazy. These are corrupt individuals, and they also assault her. And this is all like within the first 2 chapters. They assault her brutally. It is brutal what she has gone through. They kind of realize that they have the wrong person eventually, but they don't want to admit that they have the wrong person because they've beaten her, assaulted her. She is an American citizen. And they frame her and say that she was trafficking drugs, and they claim that, oh, she had this baggie on her, whatever, and we're going to throw her in our prison. She gets thrown into one of the worst prisons in Mexico, and it is a hellhole. It is hell for her in there. She's offered an opportunity to go to this section of the prison that's supposed to be better. She has to give over the rest of her money that she had on her to pay for this, to be able to go in this section. And this section is controlled by one of the most notorious cartels. Eventually there is a prison riot, and Tula is kind of like not knowing what to do in this situation. She's in the hall. This like old elderly man, I say elderly, he's like in his like mid 60s or whatever, comes out. He's like wearing a cardigan. She's confused at seeing him, thinking to herself, what is this old nice looking man doing in prison? And he asks her, do you know how to shoot a gun? And she's like, yes. And he hands her a gun because this is, you know, some of the prisoners have like weapons and stuff like that. And so she has a gun to defend herself. It's like a rival cartel coming in, and they're trying to take over this section of the prison. She's hiding, and she sees this guy with his gun go to the cell of the old man. He had gone back into his cell, shoot the lock to the door and walk in, and she decides she can't stand there and witness this old man die. So she steps in, kills this guy. The old man walks out completely surprised that she would intervene and like help him because they don't know each other. Later she finds out that this is actually the boss of the most notorious Mexican crime ring. He's there. She was completely unaware that he was there. He has a horrible reputation, and what she's seeing for herself doesn't match with that reputation. Maybe she's like, maybe they got it wrong. He's really nice. And he actually takes her under his wing. He says that he's repaying her for saving his life. She realizes that she really didn't need to save his life because he had a bunch of weapons in his room. He was probably completely fine, but he admired that she defended him. And so now all of a sudden he tells the guards, like, she is off limits. She works directly for me. Do not fuck with her. And so that's how Tula gets pulled into this situation. She's been in the prison for 2 years by the time Ricardo and Martin get themselves purposefully arrested because they're after this mob boss. And when they get there, they're completely unaware that Tula is a part of this because they've been researching like who's there, what lieutenants are going to be there, who we're going to encounter and have to befriend and watch out for. And when they see that there's a woman, there's not supposed to be a woman in the cell block. So there's a romance that brews between all three of them. It's beautiful. I really loved it. There were some very intense scenes besides the opening scenes that happened. Very much the thriller aspect of Pam Godwin's writing that happened, and shocking stuff happens in here. Difficult things to read about, to listen to, but it was still a really good book. So I gave this book 4.5 stars. So my favorite one out of this bundle was Take with Tiago and Kate. It was so great. Next, I read Never Seduce a Scot by Maya Banks, and this book is so good. Jen told me that I needed to read this book like weeks and weeks and weeks ago, and she gushed about this so much. I was like, I'm in the mood for some historical now that I've read all that dark romance. I need a break. I need something completely different. Not in the realm of dark romance anymore. This is an arranged marriage situation, and the heroine, Evelyn, everyone thinks she's a little bit touched. Her family even thinks that she's not all there. In actuality, Evelyn is deaf, and she has a reason why she hasn't explained to her family that she's not touched in the head, that she's not mentally incompetent at all. She is just deaf. She has learned how to read lips, and so they haven't figured that out. They haven't put two and two together. And when this arranged marriage happens, Graham is not happy about it because he's like, I feel I can't bed a woman who is childlike. Like, that would feel completely wrong. But he knows that he has to do it because this is an order from the Scottish king. There is no getting out of this marriage. And so he's just trying to make the best of it. When he goes to her home so that the marriage can take place, he actually quickly figures out that she's not touched like her family seems to think, that she can understand him, and they actually have a way that they can communicate. And so he is feeling a little bit better about this marriage. So all hope is not lost, and he's ready to take her home. So they do get married and they go to his estate. But the problem is, the big conflict of this story is that his clan is very... Ollie, he's sleeping. His clan is very untrusting of Evelyn's clan. They think they're untrustworthy, they're backstabbing, and they're not happy about this marriage at all. And so they treat her like an outsider, and she's trying to fit in so bad. And it's so heartbreaking, the stuff that happens to Evelyn, but the most beautiful thing happens between Graham and Evelyn. The way that these two connect to each other. I love how Graham is always there to defend her. At no point in the situation does he look at her as an outsider. Does he look at her like she's stupid and can't understand. He's slowly piecing together what she is capable of, and the way that he comforts her, the way that he tells her, like, you do belong. And so, oh my God, it's just so great. This book is phenomenal. If you have not read this book, I've read Maya Banks before, but I think that this is my favorite book by Maya Banks that I've ever read. So I gave this book 5 stars. And I was like, ooh, historical. Maybe that's where I want to be. So I decided to pick up The Chief, which was a part of my August TBR. And it was also recommended to me multiple times. So The Chief by Monica McCarty. This is another arranged marriage situation. I read so many arranged marriage historical romances during the month of August. The problem is, the writing was not compelling at all. I made it maybe halfway, 40% of the way through this audiobook, because this book is on AnyPlay as well. The situation is the same. It's like the edict of Robert the Bruce for them to marry, because he's trying to like get all of these clans to kind of work together. The way that you build bonds is through marriage and stuff like that. And the heroine Christina is forced to marry Tor. I was not interested in this book at all. 40% in, and I was like, nothing much is really truly happening. There was a conflict because Tor originally didn't want to marry Christina. Christina's father wanted her to marry Tor. So he kind of blackmails Christina, saying like, you need to go to his room late at night whenever he's sleeping. He won't recognize you. It'll be dark, and basically trap him into marriage. Like, I'll bust in with a witness before anything gets out of hand, and you'll be forced to marry because you're compromised. And that was a conflict that happened in the very beginning of the book. By the time I'm 40% in, I'm like, what are the stakes? What are the stakes? They were so low. I didn't understand what else I was supposed to be looking forward to in this book besides Tor and Christina getting to know each other and falling in love. It just felt very underwhelming, and I decided to put that book aside. So for now, this book is a DNF for me. I'm not saying that I won't go back into this book and maybe try it again, but for now, it's a DNF. Then I reread The Golden Dynasty by Chris and Ashley. This is Game of Thrones fanfic. If you love Khal Drogo and Daenerys, this is like a, what if Khal Drogo didn't die in Game of Thrones, and what if they were together? It's a fantasy book because the heroine, Cersei, which is also a callback to Game of Thrones, she is from, you know, our world, and suddenly she wakes up and she's like in this barbarian land and she has no idea what happened. So it's like culture shock for her. She doesn't know what's happening. She doesn't speak the language. There's very few people that actually understand her and can tell her what's going on. There are some non-consensual scenes, there are some heavy scenes, but this book is really good if you want some Game of Thrones fanfic, and we reread it for the podcast. I haven't read it since, like, I don't know, 2017 or so. Then I picked up Travis by Mia Sheridan. Now, this is kind of a follow-up to Archer's Voice, kind of like a sequel in that world, I want to say, because Travis was sort of the villain in Archer's Voice, and it's been years since she's written it, and she finally released a love story for Travis. Travis is the police chief. He's kind of struggled. A lot of stuff you really have to, well, you could read this as a standalone, but it's spoilers for Archer's Voice. There's stuff that went down. He used to be part of the really affluent society in Pelion Lake, and now he really and truly lives off of like a police chief's salary. He doesn't own a bunch of land like he used to because of situations that I'm not going to talk about because I don't want to spoil Archer's Voice. You totally should read Archer's Voice if you haven't before. It's a phenomenal book, a 5-star book. It's been years since the events of Archer's Voice, and he's been dating this girl for about a year. He's thinking, maybe I should settle down. Maybe she's the one. But then he walks in on her, and she is cheating on him with some young guy that she met that night. She hadn't been having a long-term affair, and that almost makes it worse for Travis because he was like, you just met this guy last night, and as he was banging you, you were saying he was the best ever. What? So Travis is feeling a little bit lost, and a lot of his conflict has to do with he feels like second best. It's tied up a lot in his relationship with his father, who passed away whenever he was only 7 years old. Again, lots of tie-ins to Archer's Voice, but the romance is so unexpected and so great, and it actually took me just a little bit to warm up to these two characters and how are they going to mesh well together. He pulls over this car who almost sideswipes him, and when he approaches the window, he notices that this lady has plants everywhere in her car that's obstructing her view, and no wonder why she sideswiped him. Her name's Haven, and she's from California, and she's a little bit sassy, and he kind of likes it, and he does end up by letting her off with a warning, but she has to unload some of the plants that she's saving from this nursery who was just going to throw them away. And she was very much put out because she was like, I can't just leave them on the side of the road. And he's like, unload your plants, come back, and come get them. So she's a little sassy. She works at the country club on like the rich side of the lake. And Travis used to go there all the time. He's still a member, even though he doesn't have as much money as he used to have. And she works at the smoothie bar. So she makes health drinks for people. And she keeps running into Travis, and they kind of clash. It's a little bit of enemies to lovers. It's not really enemies, but they have like an antagonistic. Their banter is very dry, sarcasm, picking at each other. And she's kind of obsessed with this guy who attends this like country club, and he is like Mr. Perfect. He does good works, he's super handsome, he's extremely friendly. There's a bunch of people who just kind of like look down on her because she is the bartender at the smoothie bar, but not him. He looks at her and he like talks to her and stuff like that. So she's kind of like really obsessed with him. And Travis is kind of good friends with this person. I love the way that this romance plays out because her younger brother turns out by being the guy who his ex-girlfriend cheated on him with. It's crazy. It's awesome. I really enjoyed this romance. It was a 4.5 star for me. Next, I read Heart's Prisoner by Olivia Riley. This is a sci-fi romance, an alien romance. Earth has discovered other species, like friendly alien species, so they're not unfamiliar with alien life and interacting with alien life. The heroine studies behavior, and she's interested in working with more aliens. She gets tapped to work with like a more dangerous sort of alien, and they warn her like other behaviorists have come in, they have had no success, and we just need to understand him. See if you can get him to talk. See if you can get him to say what his purpose is and, you know, learn more about him. It's a lot of shady government activity going on, honestly. You get those vibes from these people. There's lots of security, and they look at this alien not as like another life form that's intelligent, but as like more like an animal. And when Kat gets into the room, they're separated by glass, and she sees him. He's very demonic looking, very reptilian, and it's hard to see him clearly because of the color lights that they have. It's like red lights, which makes it even more eerie, but he has spikes running down like his entire spine. He has a long tail that's tipped at the end. He's very scaly and stuff like that. And the relationship develops between Kat and Xeris, I want to say. That's how you say his name. Because she's trying to actually communicate with him. She's trying to find common ground. He is very interesting because he's had all these other scientists who have like basically threatened him. Not great communicators, but Kat's actually making a breakthrough. And this is a very slow burn romance, very low heat romance as well. I wish that it had really more romantic aspects. I do feel like the characters totally had a connection, but I just wanted more like intimacy between them because it's hard to be intimate when there's a glass wall separating you for almost the entire book. So I think that this is interesting. This is a series. I think it's called Dark World Mates or something like that, the first book in a series. And I don't know how each one is connected, if it's like the same species that we see over and over again or different alien species, but I would be interested in reading the second book. So I did give this book 3.5 stars, rounded up to a 4. I totally said the wrong name for the heroine. It's Lana. Kat is the heroine for the next book. I was just looking at the wrong table. Sweet as Sin by J.T. Gessinger is a rock star romance. It's the first book in her Bad Habit series, and I've been meaning to listen to this one on Anyplay, so I wanted like a change of pace again. And I decided a rock star romance is in order. I love the setup for this because Kat is a makeup artist. She's living in California. She is kind of late to this music video that she's supposed to be doing the makeup for the person who's playing like a bride in like the scene. And she realizes, I don't think she realized at first what band she was going to be working with. And when she sees the lead singer, Nico, she immediately is like weak in the knees for him. But he's had a very public, like on-off again relationship with this like supermodel. She's beautiful or whatever. The on-off again girlfriend who's supposed to be playing like the bride in this music video is drunk and high and looks like a mess. And so Nico ends up by sending her home, and he looks at Kat and he's like, "You're gonna replace her." She's like, no, this is a 6 foot tall, like slender supermodel. I'm like barely 5 foot. I'm voluptuous. I'm not gonna be able to fit in these dresses. And she is squeezed into a dress, and she's supposed to shoot this music video with Nico as he's singing to her. And part of her role is to play like an uninterested person, like I don't love you the way that you love me type of person. And that kind of fuels their banter and this sexual tension between them. Kat is very clear, like, you have a girlfriend, and he says, I don't have a girlfriend. And she's like, don't quite believe you. And he's like, I will convince you. He heavily pursues her. And she resists at first, but then decides to trust him, and they start a relationship. I really love the beginning of this book. I love the way that Nico pursued Kat. I love the way that you could tell that he was so into her, and the way that they were bonding before crazy sauce stuff started to happen. Once paparazzi started getting involved, once the bandmates started getting involved, once his past started coming to light and the secrets he chose to keep, once all that was being revealed to me, it was too much drama. It was like J.T. Gessinger decided, I'm going to throw every single conflict I can ever think of to do with rock stars into this book, and I felt like it was overkill. It really killed the great vibes that I was feeling in the beginning. I just felt like it was way too much. It was too overboard. There was too many small incidents that was happening in every single chapter where it put Kat and Nico in conflict, arguing with each other, not trusting each other. And then finally they would be like, oh no, but I love you so much. It's so intense. And like, let's sex each other up. And I was just like, this is a volatile relationship now. Now it's not sweet. Now it's not getting to know each other. Now it's just like, I can't trust you because of all these things. And then, oh, I guess I'll trust you now and let's have sex. And then and then the end, there was like this revelation that came to light, which I'm going to put spoilers right here because I do want to say, because I thought that it was entirely ridiculous. So the woman who we thought was Nico's on-offing girlfriend was secretly his sister, and they had a horrible home life and stuff like that. And I'm just like, why would you pretend that your sister is your girlfriend? It was so weird. And then he has another like secret brother who's like involved with crime, and apparently the brother was in love with the sister and like then was after Kat because of, spoiler, the sister ends up by committing suicide. Like, it was fucking crazy. And that's on top of all the paparazzi and the band making life difficult for Nico and Kat being together. So I was just like, it was so overkill for this book. It just truly ruined it. I put this book down as a 3-star, but it kind of is more of a 2.5 star. I was being a little bit generous because I enjoyed the first half so much, but this book really just tanked hard. It hit this spot where it went downhill and it was just continuing to go down, 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 down. So I don't like this book. Next, I read The Wallflower Wager by Tessa Dare. Tessa Dare is not one of my favorite historical romance authors. I know that she's a lot of everybody else's favorite. I don't know. There's just something about her writing that doesn't really connect with me. And that's what I felt for this book. I like the idea of Penelope's character. She reminded me a lot of Beatrice from Love in the Afternoon by Lisa Kleypas. She was an animal lover, and I really liked that about her character, but she came off as extremely naive. I don't know if it was just the audio that I was listening to and the choices that the narrator was making, but I just felt like she was very, very naive. Gabriel Duke is known as the Duke of Ruin. He's not actually a duke. He's a self-made man, and he's kind of a real estate tycoon, and he also flips houses because a lot of the aristocracy had to sell their property, and he flips them and he sells them to like new money people who want to live by aristocracy and stuff. And that's how he meets Penelope, and it has a lot to do with why they're kind of like, there's a forced proximity situation where her aunt says if she doesn't want to get sent back to the country basically forever, she wants her aunt to speak on her behalf to her brother to let her stay in town, then she has to get rid of all the animals. And Gabriel kind of helps her because he doesn't want her to leave. She's part of the appeal. He's flipping the house next door. The first meeting was pretty interesting. But the problem with this book is on paper, everything is nice. Like, I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed like their background and stuff. And I enjoyed the plot on paper. But when it comes down to it, I didn't feel engaged with the story. And I feel like all Tessa Dare books are like that for me. It's like there's nothing inherently wrong with this book at all. It's the way that I feel while I'm reading it. I don't feel super invested in the story or the characters. I'm like, so. I'm just kind of like, this is fine, but it doesn't wow me. You know what I'm saying? So there's nothing wrong with this book. I see why a lot of people love it. It's just not for me. So I only gave this book 3.5 stars. And finally, I reread Filthy by Serena Ackroyd. We reread it for the podcast, and this is the first book in the 5-Point Mob series. I really enjoyed it, especially since Filthy Secret is going to be coming out really soon, and it's a follow-up to these characters. So the characters do have an HEA in Filthy, but there's something that has been kept a secret, hence the name Filthy Secret, the next book in the 5-Point Mob series. So that was really nice to be able to reread that and go back to the beginning of their relationship, because by the time Filthy Secret, like the timeline in Filthy Secret, it's been a couple years since they've been together. And yeah, I've talked about this book multiple times. I've talked about this series multiple times. It's phenomenal. It's one of my favorite mafia romance series. I love the O'Donnell brothers. I love Finn and Aoife. Their romance is super hot and heavy in the beginning, and then like there's lots of mafia stuff that happens, and they grow closer emotionally together like later on. It's like backwards. Instead of growing closer emotionally and then connecting sexually, they do it the opposite way. And I just really love it. All right, guys, so that's all the books that I read for August. This is the point where I'm cutting it off. So any book that I read right now is going to be put in September so that I can get these videos uploaded and wrapped up for you. August was a weird reading month for me. I feel like I had more 3 stars than anything, but I did have some gems in there. I did have quite a few 5 stars, so it wasn't like a total loss or anything. I'm still kind of in a mood reader mood, so we'll see what's happening next week. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, and if you're not already subscribed to my channel, make sure you subscribe to get notified on any future videos that I do. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, life's better with a little HEA. Bye guys!